we started with some folding tables and computers in my pool house. I got a call from City of Springdale saying, "Hey, you're kind of operating a business out of," and I'm like, "Yeah, but we have an office coming."
Out of your residential?
I figured out about 7 or 8 years ago that, some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by, power or fame, whatever. I'm motivated by not disappointing people. And I think most people in our business are that way. They'll go above and beyond to make sure that nobody is disappointed.
Good morning, everybody. We are sitting here in the city title office here in Rogers, in the middle of Pinnacle, heart of NWA, with very good friend, Blake Hanby. And you got the Northwest Arkansas Founders podcast, NWA Founders. You got myself, Cameron Clark, and then Nick Beyer here, a voice for founders, builders, and owners that are driving growth here in Northwest Arkansas. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you. Why don't you just give us some background on you, like personal life and where you grew up, kind of just start from the beginning here for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'm a Springdale guy, which grew up, lived in Springdale, lived in Northwest Arkansas my whole life. It's funny when you get people, that come in for closings and say, "Where are you from?" I'm from Springdale. They go, "Originally," and you go, "Springdale," right? I'm a Northwest Arkansas guy, forever. Had opportunities to, leave and go other places out of college or out of law school. And my wife and I chose to stay here, and very, very thankful we did that, just because it's such a great place to live and raise a family and live and work and play and all that goes with it. So married to Beth. We've been married for 33 years and have a couple of kids that are grown, and everybody lives here. So it's nice to have everybody here local.
Yeah. Did you meet Beth here in Springdale too?
We got set up on a blind date in college by a fraternity brother of mine and a sorority sister of hers.
Okay.
Only blind date I ever went on, and that was it. I was like, met her, and I think I was more, when we met, I was like, okay, this is the one, and she was like, I'm not so sure. But I convinced her. It took a little while to
progression.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. So when you say Springdale, just Springdale High School is where you went to high school. And
yeah, there was only one high school back then.
Yeah.
So I went to Springdale High School, graduated in '85, and went to university, and then didn't know what I wanted to do, and then kind of fell backwards into going to law school, and then got out and went to work.
Was there a little break in between college and law school, or is
just because I graduated a semester late? I was on track to go. I wanted to be an orthodontist growing up, and I went all the way through and took all of these science classes and had to switch to business. Kind of a funny story, and you can cut this out later if you want to, but I wanted to be an orthodontist my whole life and was going through and taking comparative vertebrate morphology and, organic chemistry and all this stuff to go to dental school. And then HIV hit, and I was like, man, I don't really want to dig around in people's mouths when HIV's here.
Huh, wow.
And which kind of changed the course. My dad had always made me take business classes for my electives because he's like, you can't get out and be a doctor and not be able to handle business. So I ended up switching over to the business school, and it took me an extra semester to get out. But
where did the orthodontist drive come from? Was that family, or what'd your dad do?
No, both my dad and my stepdad were both in the building material business, different types of business. But so we had an orthodontist named Tom Lauder in Springdale that I always thought, man, that's a pretty cool job. He seems like he's probably a decent way to make a living, or live here and help people, and seemed like a good deal. And then I decided maybe I'd go do something else, and ended up being a marketing major at the university, Sam M. Walton College of Business or whatever.
Yeah. And then went to law school.
Mm-hmm.
Went to law school here.
Yeah, I went to law school with zero intent of being a lawyer. My stepdad has some friends that were lawyers, and actually in the title business. It's a long story, but some friends that he grew up with in Border, Texas, are like, you ought to go to law school. And I'm like, I don't want to be a lawyer. They go, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Go get the education. Go get, it'll help you later. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I was like, that's great. My parents said, we'll pay for it if you want to go. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's go.
Give me options, and you don't have to grow up just yet.
That's right.
And so from there directly into the title business?
No, I ended up working, I worked for my mom and stepdad at National Home Centers for a while. I was doing a little bit of securities compliance stuff, and I was doing just projects, trying to, cost-cutting projects and just different projects trying to help my stepdad as he was running the company because it was growing a lot back then. And then I got into collecting bad debt in the middle 90s, and I didn't like that as much. And so I started looking around for things to do. And we were selling what is now the Home Depot store in Fayetteville and the Lowe's store up here at Scottsdale Center in Rogers that we'd built, these huge, big retail stores. And
Yeah.
we were selling those. And he said, hey, go over to the abstract office and talk to Jimmy Plumley, and let's see what we need to do to get these things, get title ready to go. So when we get them under contract, and I went in and I was like, what do y'all do? And Joy Drummond's, which is a dear friend of mine still, she owned the company, and she said, have you ever thought about getting in the title business? And I was like, I know what you do, but I don't know how you do it. And so, fast forward, 2 or 3 weeks, and I had a contract to buy it, which ultimately didn't happen for a variety of reasons, but kind of backed into the title business too. I wasn't looking to get in the title business, but it kind of found me.
Yeah.
And I've loved it ever since.
So did you started working there for a while, and then you had the option to buy it, and then
I made a deal to buy it with Joy, and it's kind of funny. At the time, I made the deal to buy it, and I couldn't afford it, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so Arvest
Figure it out.
Arvest was going to finance it, and she was going to carry back the debt that they wouldn't carry. But she said, "But I want you to work here for a year because you're going to love it or you're going to hate it."
Yeah.
And she said, "If you love it, you'll do it for the rest of your life. If you don't, you need to go find something else to do because it's too hard to work to not love it." And so I started there in February 1st of 99, and about probably November of 99, banks were buying title companies, and we ended up shifting gears, and I said, I'll go do something else, and ended up staying and working for ultimately Arvest bought it, the Walton family bought it, and I ended up working for them for several years, which was fantastic.
And how old were you at the time whenever you jumped into the title business there?
So I was 32 when I got in the title business.
Okay.
And was 44 when I jumped out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I want to get there. That's like, the meat of the discussion
right, yeah.
there. But talk about the time when was it called Waco officially, and then kind of talk about your time through there.
Yeah.
at Waco.
So Waco, which was Washington County Abstract, was established in 1885. It'd been super old company, right? And and the best company around at that time. And there was Bronson Abstract, which was great, and there were some other companies, but it was kind of the one that was really growing. And so everybody called it Waco, just kind of as not an acronym, but just a short version of it. So when ultimately it got purchased in 2000, they just said, we're going to change the name because we were in other counties, not just Washington County. We were in Washington, Benton, a little bit in Madison at the time. And they said, hey, we're going to change the name to Waco Title Company.
Yeah.
So, that was 2000, first part of 2000.
And when you say growth, how does someone measure growth of a title company? Is it just the amount of transactions you're doing, or the size of transactions? What's the
number of transactions? I think. Nobody really knows how to measure it because it's all you kind of know what people are doing, but most of the time people track it by. This sounds silly, but they'll track because I don't know how many orders other companies have. You can guesstimate, right? But it really gets down. Everybody measures them by the number of recordings you do, right? So. If I go file a deed and a mortgage and assignment of rents, that's 3 recordings, right? And so you can kind of figure out that if you have refinance transactions, there's not a deed. So you kind of have to average the numbers out. But that's how everybody's always measured market share, is based on the number of recordings. Okay. What skews that is that not everybody puts their name on their documents. And so the people that are recording that data, the information on who recorded what, if they don't recognize the notary that's on it and you don't have your name on it, they don't know you recorded it. So when we started City Title, we intentionally didn't put our name on our documents. And so if they didn't recognize our notary, they're like, I don't know how they're doing. And we did, on purpose. So we kind of slip under the radar a little bit.
Yeah.
And nobody in the public cares, right? They just kind of like, hey, do they have a good reputation? Are they honest? They can take care of my money and make sure I get everything done properly. But nobody cares market share, really, other than us.
Especially right now where it's challenging for someone just to come in and buy a house who hasn't made that jump yet. It's like a lot of people have never stepped into a title title company where they're just like they may not know completely. But back to the recordings, is that public knowledge where someone can go look in and say like, hey, this is the amount of recordings
Yeah, so used to everybody posted their own title plants.
Okay.
And so you would look, you could run reports on that. When it became electronic, where everybody's indexing all the records in their title plants electronically, several people got out of that. When I was at Waco, we did a deal. We said, hey, listen to our competitors. Hey, you guys are maintaining a title plant all of you are, and it's super expensive to do. So why don't we maintain a plant and we'll give you guys access to it online? And so Waco for years has been, for years they provided that data so you'd know where you were market share wise. They subsequently quit providing that data a few years ago. And so now you just kind of have to guess where you are. There's way too many title companies in Northwest Arkansas right now. And there were back in, the 2000s, and then a bunch of them went away and now they're back. So, but there's a lot more probably than there should be.
And why is that? Is the barrier to entry low, or is it?
The barrier to entry is relatively low. The access to the data. I mean, you can go to the courthouse and you can search the tax records and search the probate records and search the circuit clerk's site. You're not going to get everything, right? If having a good index title plant, it allows you to get a lot more of that information. Now, I'm not going to get off in the weeds of what the requirements are of a search, but like when we go do a search on a commercial property, I mean, Cameron, if you're going to go get a commercial property right now under contract, we're going to search all the way back and find any, a lot of the old easements and stuff like that are back in the 30s and 40s. Well, you're not required to search that far back, but the last thing I want you to do is go out and buy a piece of property to develop, only to find out you've got a gas easement across it that makes it where you can't develop it, right?
Yeah.
And so I won't get off in the weeds either on title insurance commitments and how you should review them and all that, but it's very important that you get all the relevant information. And so to go get that data is hard, particularly if you're doing a stand-up search in the courthouse, which is legal. I mean, you can do that by law, but having access to a title plant that has everything indexed all the way back to patent when the government gave out land, you have all that data, and I can provide it all to you, and you make a better educated decision on whether you want to buy something or whether you want to loan money on it or whether, whatever. So it's the barrier to entry is low. The barrier to doing it right is costly.
So are some of these smaller shops not tied to a plant?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Interesting.
And, a lot of people think that, with AI and with, all this, new technology, it's going to get way easier to get that data, but it doesn't make sense financially for somebody to go out and aggregate all that data because it's a lot, right? To aggregate all that data and put it in a format that can be used is not economically, it doesn't make much sense unless you have somebody that's going to buy all that data from you, right? So, and there's people that do it in big cities. If you're in Phoenix, Scottsdale, or if you're in, whatever, there are people that go and do that and sell it. That's how they make their living. But here, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. At least not yet.
Yeah, maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
So let's keep going back to the time at Waco. I want to hear so I think you were CEO when you left, correct? And kind of talk about the time up until then, and what was that like? The growth of Waco at the time. Yeah,
so I mentioned earlier, Arvest bought it in 2000, and with the goal of kind of following where Arvest banks were expanding, and so we went and bought Madison County Abstract, and we bought Mosley Abstract in Fort Smith, and we bought Conway Title, and we bought some companies in Missouri up in McDonald County, and just kept kind of growing just by acquisition.
Yeah.
And we had Northwest Arkansas had a bunch of offices up here because it was originally Washington County Abstract, and there was another satellite company that was owned that we ended up with that was partially owned. But just kept trying to grow the footprint to follow the banks around because Arvest obviously is a huge player in the mortgage market wherever they are, particularly in Northwest Arkansas. But what we found out is that while it was great to go in these other markets and serve the customers there, when we were owned by Arvest Bank, which is fantastic, but other banks would go, well, we're not sending our competitor business. And so sometimes it hurt. Sometimes it helped if Arvest had a huge market share. It helped because you'd get more business because they wanted to do business with their own company. But other banks in that market might go to the contrary.
Yeah, and I feel like that's with anything. Some people don't, whether it's, whether you can plug anyone in there, Arvest Bank or whoever. Right. It's like the big man. Not everyone wants to give their money to the big man. And some people want to feel like they're, contributing to the small guy or the medium guy. And it's like, and nobody's fault. It's just kind of how people have different styles.
That's right.
And then, so why'd you leave?
Well, so I kind of grew up with a family of entrepreneurs, right? So, my dad was in business for himself. My mom and stepdad were in business for themselves, and always wanted to do that. And so when I'd left National and went to work for Washington County Abstract, it was with the intent that I was going to go and have my own company, and
Sure.
always wanted to do that. And when I didn't, I always had that in the back of my mind. Man, I wish I'd done that. Man, I wish I'd have done that. And so I started thinking, I'm 40 at the time, probably 43. And I'm thinking, man, if I don't do it now, because where I was working was great. They took great care of me. It was a great place to work. And I was like, man, if I don't go do it, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it was kind of scary because it was 2011. The market was in the tank. Right.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, when I left, finally Beth just said, hey, if you want to do it, let's go take the risk. I was like, okay, let's go do it. So resigned like the next day.
Wow.
And it'd been working up, right? So resigned the next day, and then said, man, I got to go find an office and set up a new entity and do all this stuff. So I really hadn't planned ahead very well.
It's time to get to work.
Yeah. So, but I was like, well, I'm from here. I know enough people. I can do a little bit of legal work. I can do a little bit of title, and we'll kind of grow it. And so left and got it started, I guess, when I was 44.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, if I don't do it, I'm going to always look back and think, I wish I would have, right?
Yeah.
Or I wish I would have at least tried it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, what was the beginning like? I mean, I know you say you kind of just do what you had to survive, but where did you start? Where was the first office?
Yeah. So we didn't have an office, right? So I started looking around. We actually drove down on Zion Road. There's a new building where we started there at 1450 East Zion Road.
Mm-hmm.
And we went and found that, and the guy I was in Rotary with was one of the owners. And I was like, hey, I want to rent some space from you. And he said, okay, well, you got to get it finished out. And so I called Dennis Moore, a buddy of mine, and said, hey, how fast can you get this done? And he gave me a timeline, and he said, okay, well, what are we going to do? So we started with some folding tables and computers in my pool house, right?
Yeah.
3 doors over from you,
Yeah.
for a little bit. And just kind of going out and telling people, hey, we're in the business. We're trying to get set up. Had to get an underwriter. We had to get software. Had to get computers. Had to get printers and all that stuff. So we worked out of my pool house in this little bitty room. You've been in there before.
Mm-hmm,
It was crowded. And then I got a call from City of Springdale saying, hey, you're kind of operating a business out of. And I'm like, yeah, but we have an office coming.
Out of your residential.
Yeah, and so I talked to the mayor, and he's like, why don't you go get an office? I'm like, yes, sir. I'm going to do that today. And so we moved temporarily into the Griffin Company building.
Okay.
It's Weicker Griffin now.
Yeah.
Upstairs in one of their suites, and then got our space done on Zion Road. But yeah, it was like, not quite as, didn't turn out quite as well as like, Bill Gates starting his garage or, but
It's a good story, though.
That is a
It's
great
still-
story.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, I'm in high school, just kind of bopping around, and you're working out of your pool house.
and
I
you're
had
like,
no
why are
idea.
there so many cars over there?
Thought it was y'all just riding bikes, but
Yeah, that's right. Well, it started out, so when I left, obviously I had an obligation not to recruit people from the company I just left, right? It'd be bad form. And so,
And did you have a non-compete?
no,
Okay.
they didn't believe, and they said, though, at the time, I don't know if they do now or not, but Jim Walton's opinion was, hey, we're going to take great care of our people, and if we're not taking great care of our people, then they'll leave. If we take great care of them, they won't leave. And so,
it's awesome.
in my case, they were taking great care of me,
Yeah.
but I wanted to do something different. But I had an obligation, and I told them, I said, I won't recruit them, but if anybody calls me, it's fair game.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that's fine. And so I was fortunate enough to have some people I worked with call and say, well, the other thing is, the first thing that I had to give up was my cell phone, which had, every contact of everybody in it.
Oh, wow,
right?
yeah.
And so went and got a new cell phone, and then it's like I couldn't contact them, but I made sure my phone number became, readily known as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I got some calls from, there were 6 of us that started together, over the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But I left in, I guess, I'm trying to think April 7th of 11 is when I resigned. And I think we set up our LLC online on April 8th and closed our first deal on May 1st.
So that's a decent amount of overhead coming in with 6
Yeah,
employees.
well, and I had to make some promises to some of them that, hey, I've got X amount of dollars I can pay you for this period of time, or if you're willing to take a chance. And fortunately for me, that they all were willing to take the chance, and it worked out great. And frankly, we wouldn't be near as successful if it weren't for those, 5 other people that started and put their heart and soul into it, and they're really, really talented people anyway, and still are. One guy, Jimmy Plumley, has since retired, but he came on and was like, I don't care if you pay me for a year. I want to do this. And so I'm like, wow, which I did pay him, right? So he was a partner for a while, and we bought him out here a few years ago.
It's awesome. Before we get too far into the formation of it, because we want to dive into that, can you just tell everyone what a title company is, what a title company does? I think Cameron alluded to it earlier, but there's going to be some people who have never stepped foot in a title office. There's going to be people who've purchased a home and signed 500 papers, and that's all they know about what a title office does. So can you like dumb it down, like we're second graders here, and walk through what a title company does?
That's my level anyway. That's perfect. Yeah. So what we do on the title side, so we have on two sides of our business. You have the title insurance and search and exam and commitments and all that one side, and you have the closing side, which is the transactional side, which is what a customer sees. We get an order from whoever. Legacy National Bank sends us an order for you to buy a house. We get a contract from the realtor, and the question is, did they both pick the same title company, or did they pick different title companies? A lot of times we end up with split closings with the buyer and seller, which is silly, but that's how it is. So we take it, we enter all the data from the contract or all the data from the lender order, and then we go do a search. So we're going to search the tax records, the probate records, the circuit clerk's records, everything, and we come up with all these documents and instruments that affect the title of the property. They would back in the old days, they would produce an abstract, which would be a compilation of everything that affects that property since the beginning of time, right?
And so that's why those names of some of those was kind of
right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you have to have an abstract plant to be called an abstract company. Okay. Right.
Okay.
So we take all that same data and we put it in. Now it's electronic. Used to, it would just all be in your file, and the title examiner, which has to be licensed now, they go through and they read everything. And they look for anything that could cause a problem or anything that needs to be resolved. So they end up ultimately take all that data and examine it and put together what's called a title commitment, which is a commitment to ensure title to the property that you're buying or loaning money on or selling or whatever. So what they're going to do is they're going to set forth, here's how title's vested. So if it's, Blake and Beth Hanby, husband and wife, are in title, they're selling to, Joe and Sue Smith. The property description is this. Right. And then there's a set of requirements of what has to be done to clear title. So it'll be, got to pay your taxes. So seller has to pay the 23 taxes if it was right now. You got to pay off a mortgage. You've got to, if there's any judgments, liens, anything like that, those have to be resolved. If it's a corporate entity, you got to get all, it'll be required that you gather corporate documents to make sure the people that are signing have authority to sign. And then you have to have a deed, obviously. And then if there's a mortgage and whatever. So it sets forth all those requirements for the title insurer to insure title in that property for whoever the insured is, whether it's the bank or the buyer or whatever. And then there's a set of exceptions, which is the key to when you review a title commitment, is to look and it'll say, okay, there's an Arkansas Western gas easement from 1962. There is most of the time it's utility easements. It may be, there's a variety of things it could be, but it sets forth those exceptions. Well, you need to look at those if you're a buyer or you're a lender, right? Particularly a buyer.
Yeah, the one thing you really, really need to look at.
Yes.
For everyone listening, when you're buying a property, Section B.
Yeah. B2. Look at the exceptions, because we had an instance years ago where a friend of mine bought some property and he said, they told me I was going to use this guy. I'm sorry, I should have used you, but we didn't. This is when I was at Waco. And he bought a big piece of property to build apartments on, and then found out there was an Arkansas Western gas main that ran diagonally across the property. And it was several $100,000 to get it fixed. And ultimately he filed a claim and he got paid for it, and the gas line got moved. But he's like, man, I didn't realize that.
And that's a title insurance claim. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, so what happens is, and I always tell people, Mike Pryor, kind of a friend and mentor of mine over the years, he said title insurance is the backstop. That product is the backstop. What the real deal is the research and how you do the work. If you do it right. So if I go and I say, Cameron Clark is in title and the buyer's Blake Hanby and the lender is this person, and this is the amount of the sale and this is the amount of the loan, those are the amounts we're going to insure for. Here are the requirements. Those are easy. We can get those met. But where it really gets down to it is, did you do the work properly, the search and exam and all that to set forth everything that can affect it, so you know what because it's an exception to coverage, But if you say, well, I'm not willing to accept that exception, and maybe you don't buy it, or maybe you have them clear it up, maybe some curative work has to be done. But there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye, right?
Yeah. So far in the what people know, what you're explaining about a title company is this is the backside. This is the title search side. So you haven't even gotten to the closing side where it's my wife and I walk in, we sit down, we sign some papers. So do you feel like we've really exhausted the title search piece?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the key to it is if you're a buyer or seller or a lender, you need to look and see, you need to review the title commitment. Don't just say, well, I've got it and I'm putting it in my file and I'm ready to go close. Because there may be some reason you don't want to buy the property, or maybe something needs to be cleaned up. And then that's where we spend, a whole lot of our time is cleaning up things where, it'd be like if I decided to deed to my trust, and I deed to my trust, but I mess up the deed and I don't deed it all. Well, we got to get that fixed, right? Because you don't want to buy my property if you don't get, all of it, right? So that's a pretty simplistic way to say it, but you need to review that. And then, but nobody really cares, right? They're like, well, they have it handled. Well, you need to review it and ask questions if you have questions. If you need to get a lawyer to review it. But it's a big investment for people, and that to take it more seriously in a lot of cases.
Let you kind of finish telling everything that City Title does, but I think I want to highlight on this as we go on, but the commitment to excellence here is just unmatched.
Well, thank you.
Well, and I've got multiple stories like that show it. That just so everyone knows here too. Do you get paid if the property doesn't close?
No.
Exactly. And it's like, but there's a reputation there that goes on like, hey, I want to make sure you know this, this, and this, and this. I mean, you're talking about searching back to title back into the 60s, which is further than you have to go. When I'm just switched out of brokerage, but to my time in brokerage, y'all were dealing with a client for me here that was developing a restaurant on top of a site that used to be a gas station, but that was in the 50s, and even though the current owner didn't even know that, and so it was like, hey, were the tanks removed? Is it a safe site? Is it like, and is the bank going to do the loan? And but more than anything, like, is it a safe place to operate a restaurant? And we were able to figure out that yes, it was. It had been mitigated, and it was ready to go. But just like the fact that Shelby calls me and is like, hey, I want to make sure you don't miss this. Like, hey, here's an important line item here that needs to get addressed. And like you're saying, you don't get paid if it doesn't close, but it's like you got a reputation to uphold.
Yeah, I tell people that say, well, what happens if something closes? I mean, some markets they'll charge you a cancellation fee. We don't, because if you bring a deal and say, hey, I'm trying to sell this property, and that deal falls out, just bring it back to me, and we'll deal with it. You didn't make any money either on that deal because it canceled or whatever. So, yes, we don't make anything unless it closes, and we want everything to close, but they don't always happen.
Yeah,
and if we get 100 orders historically over the last 25 years, if you get 100 orders in, 13% will cancel. And so that's just lost revenue because you've done the work, right? 99% of the time you've done all the work, and then it just doesn't close, and for reasons outside of your control.
It's good. Okay, so we walk through the title search, and then the closing side is we walk in, you hand us papers, and is that where y'all review the exceptions, or is that the buyer-seller's responsibility to review those?
Buyer, seller, lender ought to review those ahead of time, because when it comes to closing, it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of the celebration day of, somebody's getting a house, somebody's getting to sell a house and getting some money, and a lender's getting a new loan, whatever. Probably not. It's not too late, but you should review it ahead of time, right?
That's great.
So the other side of our business is the closing side, right? Yep. And we work hand in hand, but they're very, very different. So on the closing side, we're taking all the lender information, taking the contract. We've ordered, if there's a termite policy required or a survey required, or, whatever that may be, POA dues, homeowners association dues, delinquent taxes, if there's judgments or liens against the seller that have to be cleared in order to provide clear title to the buyer or clear title for the lender. We do all that stuff leading up to closing. Okay. And so if there's a lender involved, they'll say, hey, we want to close on October 1st. Okay, well, that's where everybody's moving towards, right? And that's typically the contract date or thereabouts. So we have people on the closing side that are gathering all that data, getting payoffs for, seller's existing mortgage and whatever. And take all that and you put it in a HUD-1 settlement statement on the residential side or closing disclosure. And put all that information in and then send it out and let people review it. So buyer knows how much money they need to bring, lender make sure that you have the lender fees right, realtors look and make sure that their commission's right and that everything's getting taken care of like they anticipated under the contract. Seller make sure they know they're getting how much money, or sometimes sellers have to bring money to closing, which hasn't happened much here lately, but there are times when it has over the years. And so you get all that, and on top of that, you get a stack of loan documents if it's a secondary market loan. If it's in a bank in-house loan, there's not as many documents. But if it's a secondary market loan, it's a lot of papers, right? Some of that's getting better because so much of it can be done electronically now on e-sign. But you still have to get a wedding mortgage for 99% of the lenders now. So you come in and then ideally you get all that stuff. You're required to get it 3 days in advance now, so you get it and you can review it, and then ideally, you would come in here and go, yep, everything looks good, and just start signing, right?
Great. That's great. I think what you did an awesome job of highlighting is like all of the back office work that goes into making that process 5 minutes of signing papers. And it seems like Cameron highlighted the diligence that y'all have at City Title is far above par. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, it's. I think a lot of people think that something comes in, we put the information in and push a button, and everything just comes out, and it's a very manual process still on the title and closing side. But there's 44 or 5 of us that do this every day, all day. And I always tell people it's like doing homework. If you don't like doing homework, it's hard. It's a whole lot of phone calls, a whole lot of emails, a whole lot of hand holding in some circumstances, but more than anything, it's just, hey, I want to make sure this customer has a great experience and that they get what they think they're getting, and everything's very transparent, and just try to take care of the customer.
And have you always had that? Has that just been like ingrained in who you are?
Yeah, I tell people that I figured out about 7 or 8 years ago that some people are motivated by money, some people are motivated by power or fame, whatever. I'm motivated by not disappointing people, and I think most people in our business are that way, that they'll go above and beyond to make sure that nobody is disappointed, right? And so there's a whole lot more that goes into it than what meets the eye, because people don't get to walk back in our office because we have confidential information. So we have people's social security numbers and their sometimes their financial statements or tax returns or whatever. That's rare, but it does happen. And so it's kind of like behind the curtain, what's the wizard doing behind the curtain? And there's a whole lot of people back here, in our offices that do all that work and spend a whole lot of time, with a lot of TLC taking care of people.
That's good. So back to the early days, y'all have roughly six people that you kind of cobbled together this team. Yeah, it sounds like you got business pretty fast within the first month of opening the doors. You said your first deal was in May and you opened in April 8th or something like that, right?
Yeah, so we opened April 8th, got set up, and I can't remember if it was Brian Moore or if it was Derek Gibson that placed it. One of them had the first order and one of them had the first closing. And I can't remember which order it was. But they're obviously friends of mine growing up, and they're younger than me, and I'd known them my whole life. But yeah, so as soon as we opened up, it was interesting. I thought, X person, they'll for sure send me their business. They'll start sending me everything. And there's other people that had never done business with us that I thought, well, we'll never get their business. And it turned out in a lot of cases to be the opposite. Some people just said, hey, Blake's out on his own, I want to help him out. Or maybe it's somebody on my team, I want to help him out. And like the fact that we're independent and that we're locally owned. And, so there were people that kind of came alongside us and said, hey, I'm going to send you everything I can, because they knew we would take good care of them, right? And so that turned out to be surprising on both sides of the spectrum, but business started coming in pretty well. I was like, man, I hope by the first year we can make money. And it was like the first month we were making money because we had very low overhead relatively, right? Yeah.
And so at that point, is it, just friends, and are you kind of going not door to door, but are you meeting with realtors, lenders,
yes,
like putting your name out there?
Yeah, a lot of people.
It's not like you just set up shop and money started coming in.
No,
you were doing hard work.
Yeah, and so we were, of course, I was involved with the chamber and involved with all this stuff that Rotary Club and just stuff that I'd been here for at that point 44 years of my life, right? And so and other people, and it was kind of funny. When we started, there were 6 of us and 5 of us were Springdale High School graduates. just so happened, right? I mean, we look back and like, oh wow, that's weird. But we knew a lot of people, and a lot of people trusted us, fortunately. And so we were out calling on people saying, hey, if you have any, we'd love to work on some stuff for you. And it just starts coming in, right? Mm-hmm. So you get an order or two a day, and then it's 3 or 4 a day. And then, it just kind of mushrooms from there.
And co-founded it with Jimmy, or that was kind of a partnership deal at the beginning?
Well, so Beth and I decided we were going to do it, right? Yep. So we founded it, and then had a couple people come on board, and then Jimmy Plumley, which was kind of, he was Mr. Commercial Title, and forever around here.
Older than you, Blake?
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay.
Yeah. So he's a little bit older, and I'd known him for years and known his family. But he called and said, hey, I want in. I go, what do you mean you want in? But I know how to do title work, but I'm not good at it because I don't have that different personality type and different skills. And so he said, I want in. I want to be a partner. And I was like, okay. I wasn't really planning on that. And I didn't think he would ever come because, he was getting later in his career. And I was like, why would he ever leave what he's doing, right? And so he said, I want to come on board, and I want a stake in it. And so we agreed to do that with a deal that I could buy him out at whenever he got ready to retire.
And this is how early on is this conversation happening?
Probably 2 weeks after we started.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I went in not knowing what I was going to do. It was like, we'll have to figure this out. Got to get title plan access, which I ultimately didn't get, but at first, and then we did. And so he came on, was a partner with Beth and I. And then the others came in, as, kind of started the company with them, because some of them came on, as soon as they found out I left, they gave 2 weeks notice and came on. I was like, oh, thank God. Yeah, because otherwise it would have been, it'd been a lot different story. We wouldn't be sitting here. You guys would be like, whatever happened to Blake Hanby? He ended up going off and, doing something different. But yeah, very, very fortunate for that. But so kind of went from there. And then my goal was, I always tell people, when I left Waco, everybody's like, you're an idiot. Why would you leave that great job for a great company? I can't believe you're doing it. I said, well, I just always want to try it. And then 2 years later, the market came roaring back, right? Mm-hmm. And we were doing great. And people were like, you're a genius. I'm like, the same people that said I was an idiot were like, yo, that was so smart. I knew it all the time. And they're like, no, you didn't. You told me I was an idiot to my face.
I still remember what you said.
Yeah.
We were at dinner. You told me that.
Yeah. So, yeah, but my goal when we started, I said, because Waco had grown a lot and it was very successful and had and has a lot of really great people. But we had gotten to the point where it was so big and it was a lot of HR and a lot of meetings and a lot of stuff. And I'm like, we don't staff for that. We staff for people that can handle the work, right? Because it's a pretty thin margin business. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I just want to go, if I could get 16 or 18 people, if we could grow to 16 or 18 people, be a boutique type of shop, do commercial and residential, and keep those separate and do it really well. That's my goal. I don't want to be the biggest. I just want to be the best at what we do. Never had a desire for it to grow to the extent it did. Just lucky and grace of God, it grew to what it did. And sometimes I'm like, I wish it was still 16 or 18 people, right? But it's not. But we had a lot of people that came alongside us, customer-wise and friends, that came on and said, "Hey, we're gonna send you business," and it just kept growing. Like, we got to keep hiring people. We got to keep taking care of these people, and I don't want to turn anybody away that that we can provide products and services for. So it just kind of kept growing, and really up through 22, and then we had a little decline in 23, which knocked about 30% off everybody's top line. Just because deals just weren't happening.
The number of transactions were down.
Yeah.
And so what does that what does that part of the business look like? Is it when things are good, you're growing, and then when macroeconomic factors happen like they have been, is it layoffs? Is that common in your industry?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah. So I would say in a lot of markets, and for a lot of people here too, that when that happens, people start looking. We need to lay people off. We didn't. Just because I was like, well, we've got great people. It's really hard to train people, particularly on your experienced people. It's hard to train them and get them up to speed to where they know what they're doing. And so we held on to people. We had some people leave. Some people want to go, I'm going to go be a stay-at-home mom, or I'm moving out of town to do this or that, or I'm going to work for a vendor or whatever. So we had some people leave. But until we didn't lay anybody off for lack of business, which, well, I mean, some people would say, well, it's not smart financially. You should have done that. And I was like, well, these people, they've taken care of me. I'll take care of them.
That's amazing.
And so we were up to 55 people just through attrition over 2.5 years. We went down to about 42, and we're kind of going back up now. I mean, I would love to hire 2 or 3 title agents and a couple of closing agents right now, just because it's coming. I mean, it's already been good. The commercial business has been great, and it's kind of held on. Residential business is coming back, but with the rate drop yesterday and mortgage rates starting to come back down, we're going to see another little bit of refinance boom. Not boom, maybe, but something. But the other thing is, Northwest Arkansas is going to continue to grow, and there's so many tailwinds that you hear about and we may talk about, but it's just crazy how this market's grown since I was a kid.
It's amazing.
Yeah, maybe talk about just, as the company was growing, just like, I mean, even just as a whole, like the number of transactions you've just seen, like from when when you first started in the business till now, like, I think one of the things I've heard is like on the brokerage side, people were like, man, you knew every transaction off the top of your head, whether it was in Pea Ridge or Farmington or wherever, regardless of product type. It was like there just wasn't that, as many. I mean, I don't know how it felt on the title side or what the.
Yeah, so the title side is interesting. When the market started, when rates climbed so rapidly and deals started falling out, there was still a lot of transactions happening. A lot more people had gotten in the business, so they're spread out over a bunch of different companies that are doing the same thing we are. But fortunately for us, we make, so back to our 2 sides of our business, we make money doing searches and exams. That's part of our fee structure and title commitments and policies, right? And so we have a title premium, and then we have a closing fee. And
are those fees a percentage of the deal, or is it just a flat fee for services rendered? How does that work?
Yeah, so closing fees and title search fees are just kind of fees for services rendered, and the market kind of dictates what that is.
Sure.
The title insurance premium is like any insurance premium. It's based on the value or the face amount of the policy, right? So in our case, even though the number of transactions declined in Northwest Arkansas, not everywhere, but in Northwest Arkansas, values were increasing. Therefore, loan prices or loan amounts were increasing. So some of our revenue lost for lack of transactions was made up by the amount of title insurance premium going up because values went up, which helped, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it didn't totally make up for it, but it helped. It wasn't a total, it wasn't like just 30% of our revenue is gone, because as prices rose, some of that revenue stayed with us because of those values going up.
So as we talk through, because I want to transition to, like, we'll call it 2015 to 2020. So like the middle part of your company, Northwest Arkansas, probably rebounding, experiencing some of that growth. But before we move on from that, just thinking back to those early years, were there any big mistakes that, as you look back, you're like, man, I wish I would have gotten a redo on that one, or I wish I would have done this differently, whether it's formation of the company, structuring it, partnerships, just anything in general?
I probably should have been more aggressive on hiring when I had the chance. I mean, because there were some people I didn't hire that I wish I'd hired, but I was like, listen, I've promised this select group of people that came on first, I'm going to take care of them, and they've got families and they've got, and so I was probably a little too conservative there, but I'm not much of a risk taker for the most part. And so, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm just aware of the risk in that circumstance. And I didn't want to jeopardize what I could do for those first few people because I'd made a promise to them. But if I had to do over again, I would have hired some more people that were super talented that I just didn't.
That's good. Well,
other than that, I mean, I can't look back on anything that I think, man, I really wish I'd done that a whole lot different.
Yeah. Well, that's good. No, I think if anything, that just highlights your commitment to people, which we'll talk about later. But it seems like the people that work for you, you're super committed to. So, what an awesome thing to look at from the outside. But yeah, moving in the next 5 years, 2015 to 2020. I mean, some growth starting to happening. Things are picking up. Market's rebounding. Talk through, like, okay, so you're at 6 employees. How that kind of starts to scale. At some point, you shift up to Benton County, and how that changes your business. Let's kind of diagnose some of that.
Yeah, so we opened in Fayetteville, which I had said, hey, we're going to start in Washington County. That's where I'm from. That's where my sweet spot is. And I knew a lot of people in Washington County, not as many in Benton County, but so in 2012, we started trying to get deals up here as well, because obviously there was a great deal of growth going on up here. And it's amazing how many people said, when you open an office in Benton County, we'll do business with you. I'm like, well, I'll come to you. I'll come to your house. I'll come to your office. I'll come to wherever. We'll come close your deals wherever. And they're like, when you get an office, it was like the Chamber of Commerce was talking to me, right?
Yeah.
And so we opened this office in 2000, an office in World Trade Center. We rented for Mrs. Hunt in 2012.
And what was happening up here then, Blake? Because I remember I was working at Pinnacle at the time. I was in high school, and I remember getting off that exit, and all I would pass was farmland. And then I remember when that Walmart was built, Neighborhood Market. I don't remember the year, but it was like the wildest thing. So there was growth happening up here, but it wasn't. You look at all the buildings now. That's what, 10 years old. What was happening 2012?
Yeah, well, I think you had, the Hunts were a big part. I obviously did all the stuff here at Pinnacle and across at the Promenade and different places. They had a vision for what that was going to be. I mean, I think we'd be remiss not to talk about the fact that the stakeholders we have in this market, whether it's the Waltons, the Hunts, the Tysons, you name it, the George family in Springdale with all they're doing. But there's all these people that are spending a great deal of money and their wealth and influence to make Northwest Arkansas cool. And I think we were just starting to see it then. And we kind of went from where it was, Springdale, Fayetteville, Rogers, Bentonville, Siloam, to it just kind of became Northwest Arkansas, or it was kind of turning into a region more, right? Yep. With the airport having come on and, all the development of the Pinnacle area, hospitals are growing, the university's growing. And I think we'd be silly to think that a whole lot of the credit should not be given to them and local city governments and what was happening there. There was a whole lot of momentum. There's a ton of people coming in here, first of all, whether it's for Walmart or Tyson or JB Hunt or whatever, but there's a whole lot of people moving here. One, just because it's a cool place, and there's people that are moving here have vendor jobs that they're getting transferred in here, and maybe their spouse is like, I ain't moving. And they come here and they go, oh, wow, we can buy a house on the lake for that, or we can buy a house in Pinnacle subdivision for that, way cheaper than Chicago or wherever they're coming from. So there's a whole lot of momentum by virtue of the fact that we had, some of the large companies here, and the university didn't help. I mean, it didn't hurt, rather, because, university was growing, enrollment was growing, apartments coming online. There's a lot of development. So I think it's, it's like better to be lucky than good. I mean, the market was growing because people were just coming here, right? And we were the benefactors of that to a certain extent.
But still, you had to have some vision.
Not benefactors, beneficiaries of that. Not
you had to have some vision, though, to move up here in 2012. Like, that still feels semi-early on the curve.
So we started looking like, okay, how can we go get more business? What are we going to do? How are we going to take care of because we had customers up here, right? I mean, there's realtors and mortgage lenders, they operate, all over Northwest Arkansas. And so we started looking at deals, and deals were happening up here. And I had, fortunately, I've known some of those families I mentioned earlier for years, and growing up, and kind of, it's like, okay, we tried to go get some of that. We're going to grow our business. And so we came up here, and at the time, Washington County, I would say, was doing more transactions. Right now, of the orders we get, 2/3 of them are in Benton County.
Wow.
And I mean, that's more recent. It's been 60-40 for a while, and right now, like if you look at my order counts for the last 6 months, 2/3 of them are in Benton County. A lot of that has to do with where the growth can happen, right? And it's infrastructure, and it's roads, and it's water and sewer and utilities and whatever, and a whole lot of action in Bella Vista. I mean, Centerton obviously has grown, crazy, and Pea Ridge is growing like crazy. Gravette and Decatur and Gentry and Farmington. Some of that stuff's growing too. But I think it's just a matter of infrastructure in the different municipalities where you can get a new subdivision where you can grow. Because there's people that need houses. There's a shortage of houses, and there's a shortage of lots. And I don't know how it's going to be a challenge to keep up going forward for all the people that are coming in.
So in those middle years, 2015 to 2020, you've got the office open in Benton County. You've got your Washington County office, and sure, that's where a lot of your relational equity was at that point. But at what point do you see the Benton County office start to like really pick up? Is it in those years, or is it kind of
Yeah, I think
last 5 years?
No, I think it was all along. It's just a matter of
Okay.
once we got up here, because there were some great companies already up here that had their foothold in the market, and we're like, how can we get in that? And so we got up here, opened our office in Rogers, and started working clients up here, and just making those relationships. And most of our business comes from we end up closing a deal for you just because it got sent to us for whatever reason. We don't know you from Adam, and then we get to know you and we close your deal, and you go, hey, that was great. And then you bring me the next one, and then somebody asks you, hey, who should I use? I mean, most of it's word of mouth, because we're not doing radio advertising and TV advertising, because like I said earlier, I'm not marketing to you guys as home buyers. I'm marketing to you guys as real estate professionals or lending professionals or whatever. But there are some that we had relationships with through, whether it's through Fellowship Bible Church, or whether it's through Rotary Club, or whether it's through whatever, that our people that are involved in the community every day, because we're all from here. People go, oh, well, I'm going to use City Title because I know, Carissa Judy. She goes to church with me.
Yeah.
And she'll take care of my deal. And so, it's just word of mouth, and people know that, you're honest and you're going to take care of them, and you'll be trustworthy.
Okay, so flip into we'll call it now, the present, last 3 to 5 years. Obviously, super dynamic market, and you and Cameron could talk circles around that. But let's talk about.
I think in the last 5 years, we need to talk about just what Cameron's done.
There we go.
This is a podcast about you.
It's a pretty phenomenal rise. Yeah.
There we go.
No, I will say my favorite encounter with you in that window, I think it was in 2021. We're sitting down doing a closing for a client, and I asked you, I was like, and this is kind of back to your commitment to excellence. This is what like radically blew my mind. I was like, how's it going? How's everything going? And you're like, man, it is going. And he's like, I get here about 6 a.m. I leave about 6:30 p.m., go home, eat dinner, have a glass of wine with my wife, and then I work till midnight. Yeah. And I've done that for the last however many months, and the market was exploding. But your commitment to excellence was just, it was just so on point. There have been multiple times where there's that, but like that's throughout the entire organization here. And like outside looking in, that's where I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah, I can tell you if we have a transaction going on, and if I'm still awake, or if my phone buzzes and wakes me up, and you say, hey, we've had this change, I can't go back to sleep until I'll just go get on my computer and do it and send it out. And I don't know if it's just that then I can get it off my mind, or if that way I know that you're taken care of, or both, right? That's my personality. Jimmy Plumley's the same way. Pam and Dwayne are the same way. It's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to, I don't want to let these people down. I want to make sure they get taken care of. So there's a lot of times where, people get emails from me with, settlement statements on a commercial deal or something that's, it's 1 or 2 in the morning. It's just because I wake up and see it on my phone, which is a blessing and a curse, right? And you're like, I can't go back to sleep until I get this done.
How do you hire people like that?
I don't know. So much of what we do you can do training, but so much of it for the people that really excel, Josh Height, Dwayne Flint, Pam Weeks, Randy Forbes with Jimmy, they just have that desire to take care of people, right? And it's almost like you need to hire off personality more than you need to hire off skills. And you can train this, to a certain extent, you can train the skills, but you got to find people that really have a heart for serving people.
There was a moment with Josh too, just kind of as I was when I was super green in the brokerage industry, and I was kind of needed someone to tell me, hey, this is how things go. This is what's going on. But and the deal was falling apart because of a lender. It's an SBA deal, and I was like, Josh, like tell me what do I need to be looking for and all that stuff here, and he cared about the entire project. It was another super meaningful experience here to me. But
he's a wizard. He's one of the few people in our business. Jimmy Plumley could do it, and there are some people that are okay at it. Josh can do title and closing and can kind of flip back and forth really easily, and that's pretty rare. But he's great.
Okay, so let's talk about the economics of the business. So I think you shared a little bit. Y'all have kind of standard fees set forth and title searches and all that, and then a big piece of your revenue or growth comes from the title insurance premium. So walk us through whether it's revenue. I know we talked through employee, but just where y'all are at now, the scale of your business, and how that's grown, whether it's keggers over the last few years or just how you've seen your business grow.
Yeah, so up through 22, I mean, frankly, 21 and 22, early 22, it's like we've got to either hire more people or we've got to figure something out because people were getting worn out, right? Revenue was great. Profits were great, but like we can't sustain this unless we either grow or we start turning down business. And I've never been known to turn down business, right? Like, well, sure, we can help you. We'd love to help you.
Even if that means staying up till midnight.
Yeah, sometimes it does, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's other times that, when business isn't as big, and you've got to realize that with your people that, there was a period of time where like we had more people than we needed, right? Which I mentioned earlier. And you're like, they need to kind of recoup. It's like almost like they need a vacation to a certain extent of like, we got to kind of get everybody kind of rested and relaxed, and then we'll come back and get ready to go. And I think it's getting ready to happen again. So, so from a revenue standpoint, we started and had, just from starting from zero, revenue kind of went for a couple of years and then just went upwards, right? Quick. And then kind of leveled off. And then obviously 22 was kind of peaked out and then down a little bit. Like I said, we're down order-wise, we were down 30%. And that's kind of nationally what you hear. Revenue wasn't down, 30% just because, like I mentioned earlier, the title premiums went up. But it's, in our business, you kind of figure out because over half of our expense in our company is labor. And of course, health insurance premiums are up and salaries are up because there's a demand. I mean, right now, if I want to hire, one of you guys, which, I couldn't hire you guys, I'm kidding. So, but like if I want to hire one of you guys, the market for guys with your talent at your age and your influence in the community and everything is huge, right? So how do you go and balance that with, what can I afford to pay somebody to do this job, whatever, right? Just like any business decision. But going in, I know what my break even is within, a few $1,000s every month. And I mean, some of that's affected by overtime or whatever, but, health insurance premiums have skyrocketed and payroll has gone up quite a bit. And so you're like, okay, how do we do this? Because we have all these costs that are fixed, and can we raise prices, to justify like everybody else has? And we've tried not to do that, but we got the benefit of the title insurance premiums going up a little bit by virtue of the values, like I mentioned earlier, and that took care of some of it. But it's, I would like to see it come back to the 21 levels, maybe not 22, just as far as volume goes. And some of that's just going out. We have right now. We need, like I said, we need title agents, closing agents, and we kind of need people in all positions as we grow. But we particularly need those two because I can't go out and say, Cameron, you got a new deal. It's 500 deals or whatever. I mean, I'm making that up. But if you had a real estate agency, like say we're going to go get 500 new deals, who's going to produce title on those?
Yeah.
I mean, we have some because we have some capacity, but we may not have that much capacity, or maybe it's maybe it's way more than that. But so we've got to figure out how to handle those deals. Because I never want to overpromise and underdeliver. I want to do just the opposite, and so we can make sure we take care of people in a timely manner. Nobody's waiting on us.
So what are you tracking as a business owner? I mean, is it revenue in your industry, or is it, you said recordings, and just to break that down for the audience here, that's number of transactions. And then you have transaction volume, which is if you're doing less recordings or number of transactions, but therefore a way bigger number, right? Then your volume stays flat or goes up. So what are you really?
So I track orders.
Okay.
That's what I look at every day.
Okay.
Just because I know how many orders on average, what average revenue profile is, now if we occasionally may have a deal on a commercial deal that's, a huge deal that kind of skews those numbers for that month. But overall, over the course of the year, we kind of know what our revenue profile is, and we know what our expense, is overall. So you can kind of just run those numbers pretty easily. So I always look every day and say, are we averaging X number of orders? And if we are, then I don't really worry about it. It's not that I'm not a numbers person, but I don't worry about that stuff as much. I just know, hey, if we're taking care of people, the numbers will take care of themselves.
That's good.
And then if the market declines, which it's not going to in Northwest Arkansas, I don't think, not to a great extent because there's so much momentum. But I just make sure we have X number of orders, and like, what do we need to go out and push it a little bit more, which we should be doing that all the time. But like I said, I've got X amount of capacity right now to produce title and close deals. And unless we gear up, I'm not going to go out and make promises I can't keep.
That's good. And then just kind of breaking down the business more, you said now, and we'll call that 2024, 2/3 of your transactions are happening here in Benton County.
Correct.
And how does that compare to, we'll call it 10 years ago? Was it flipped or?
Yeah, I think, it was probably, I would say, and maybe it's because we started in Washington County. That's where most of our relationships were early on. But Washington County obviously had the lion's share of the deals. Most of the developments were happening in Washington County. You had Bella Vista that had 10,000 lots that weren't sold, and you had Centerton was just barely getting started. Nobody was moving to Pea Ridge or to Gravette or Decatur or Gentry. People were moving to East Fayetteville, Farmington, Prairie Grove, Tawnytown, whatever. There's a lot more happening down there. It may have just been that's where the market was, right? But it's flipped. I mean, we do so many Bella Vista sales now. It's just crazy. Like people that are y'all's age are going and buying Bella Vista rather than people that are older than me, right? And I don't know what the average age is now versus what it was 15 years ago in Bella Vista, but it's drastically lower, right? Because you got great schools, you're close to Bentonville and all the activity. It's still cheaper than everywhere else, or not everywhere else, but the big four. And it's beautiful, right? Like
the amenities are there.
Yeah, all the amenities are there, and it's going to get better with everything that's been announced, right? So it's turning into a cool place rather than a retirement village. And so there's that, and there's Centerton, I mean, Pea Ridge, there's like just all the tertiary areas around the major 4 or 5 cities are going to keep growing just because land's cheaper, and that's where they can develop, presuming they can get utilities to them.
And then as your business has grown and shifted, talk about residential versus commercial. Has commercial become a bigger part of your business?
Well, we do quite a bit. We have a true commercial division, right? Okay. Not everybody does. Some people, they do some commercial, and they may get an apartment complex, they may get a commercial building. We have a whole division of people that's all they do, where we deal with Cameron on his side, right? So we have, I tell people, it's like, at one point we had 10 attorneys on staff. We have 7 now, which is really unusual for a title company. But we have these people that they love doing title work and closing deals and being involved in the transactional side, but maybe didn't want to be billing hours at a law firm or whatever.
So you're saying that's unusually high for a title company?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Most title companies have 0 attorneys. Not that that's a big deal, but it does give you, a certain level of expertise that comes in helpful. That's helpful, particularly on the commercial side. But the commercial side of our business is about 12 to 15% of our orders. Obviously, the revenue is higher just because the deals are bigger. But the lion's share of our business is residential. It's, buying and selling houses.
That's good. Let's talk about the size of deals now versus the size of deals then. And I think you and Cameron probably both have some really fun stories you could share. But as you've seen this market change a lot, I imagine the size of the deals that are crossing your desk are pretty wildly different than they were 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Now, every day if we get, 25 orders in, 4 of them are going to be over $1 million on the residential side, and then and you'll get some of them that are, because the prices of houses have gone up, right?
Yeah.
They used to be a commercial building, now it's a house in wherever. But the size of some of the commercial deals, and people compete pretty hard for those. But if it's the hospital is refinancing or an apartment deal is selling on one of these, selling to a REIT out of somewhere, that these deals are, $50, $60 million apartment sales, apartment complex sales and whatever it is. The deals have gotten, some of them have gotten really big, and they're more complex, but it's the structure of the deals are more complex. Closing them is not necessarily more complex. A lot of times it's easier to close a commercial deal where the parties all know exactly what's going on and they all have attorneys on staff, and it's way easier to close one of those deals than a $15,000 piece of property out in the county that has messed up title, right? So, and we kind of, back to our fees, a lot of that, you kind of average, you're like, okay, what do we need to make on an average transaction in order to make a reasonable return? And so that's what you set it at. Sometimes you get, a $6,000 deal that involves a mobile home out in the county that takes you countless number of hours to get it done. Or I could sell, a $10 million, not sell, but take care of a sale of a $10 million property, across the street, and it's way easier. Revenue, wildly different in those cases, and probably the expense side of it's wildly different too, just because some deals are way more complicated and they're you lose money on them, but you do those because those people need to,
That's right.
it needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. And is there a focus from you there as a business owner? Are you trying to focus more on commercial? Are you trying to focus more on residential, or is it just,
Yes.
hey, we just want to take
Both.
care of whoever comes to us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the residential business for us is huge, right? I mean, that's the bread and butter of what we do. The commercial
85%.
side of it is, I would say, we just kind of have a dual focus. I mean, like I said, I wouldn't want Shelby or Josh you deal with all the time, Cameron. I wouldn't want them doing residential transactions all the time because their expertise is more on the commercial side.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, you don't want me closing your residential, refinance. I mean, I could sit and have you sign papers, but Pam and Dwayne and Leisha and Stephanie and Connie, they know all the rules of what you can do on FHA or VA or whatever, and they're really good at that. And so we just have specialists in each of the areas that are. We have a couple people that are mobile home specialists because mobile homes can be a pain in the backside, right?
Wow.
For just trying to figure out how to get titles canceled and get them, or if you've got a lost title. We have a couple people that are really good at that because it's really cumbersome. But like if one comes in, you go, okay, that goes to them.
And so it sounds like you have a lot of expertise and a lot of your employees have expertise.
Yeah, I was going to say,
in
let's clear that
different
up. I
areas.
don't.
There we go.
I'm really good at hiring people smarter than me.
which is, I mean, no doubt as a business owner, one of the most important things
Sure.
you can do and have to do. You talked a little bit about that expertise. Is any of that happening out of Northwest Arkansas? We'll call it in the state of Arkansas. And then to go even further there, do y'all do transactions that happen outside of the state of Arkansas? What does that look like?
So we don't. We're licensed in Arkansas
Okay.
To write title. We will occasionally close a deal that's somewhere else if it's for an existing client that maybe is in Oklahoma or Missouri. I have a couple deals in Missouri right now that we're going to close for some really good clients of ours that we're not going to write title, but we're going to close the transaction and get all the recording done, and then the title insurance company in Missouri will issue title on those, and we'll work hand in hand with them to get those done. But we do stuff all over the state on the commercial side, just because, I mean, if Cameron has a deal on a Dollar General in Pine Bluff, I can do that just as easy as I can do one here. Because everything's be done by mail or by, people, I can send it and they'll go have their notary take care of it, whatever, right? So much of the commercial side is done, mail out and email and e-sign and so much of that stuff. So residential side, on the contrary, is here. So we do residential in Washington, Benton, a little bit in Madison. We'll do, some stuff in, just kind of our adjacent counties occasionally if it's for a client. But most of the time it doesn't make sense for us to do that and order a search and have that expense and then on top of what we're doing. So it's better for the client that we may say, hey, we'll close it if you're here.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to let them do the title work somewhere else just because it's more cost effective for the customer.
So why not grow more regionally? Why not a Tulsa office, a Little Rock office? Like is the value there for you, or is it just, hey, we're just hyper focused here? I mean,
so when I left my former employer, I said, I'm a Northwest Arkansas guy. There's plenty here for me to do, right? I don't want to get back to like what was the old place where there's 150 people and tons of HR issues and all that. Like, I just want to keep it small and boutique-y, right? Mm-hmm. So we have people all the time going, hey, why don't you set up an office in this county? Like, because it's not that I don't want to. I don't have the bandwidth to go and spend time there when I think it's better spent in Northwest Arkansas where all the growth is.
Yeah.
And there's so much momentum here that I think I would be better off figuring out how to get more market share here and take care of more people here than going and trying to set up a company in Carroll County, which is where my dad's from. And I know people in Carroll County, but I'm better off using my resources and our expertise here because the number of transactions here just is not even close, right?
Keeps going up.
So I've seen people, and I've done this in the past, where you go and say, okay, we're going to go set up an office in this other county. We've probably been better off rather than going to this little county and getting, 2 deals a day to go call on this real estate company or this lender and get 2 deals a day from them.
Yeah.
And so there are people that have that deal. We're going to expand everywhere. We're going to grow. And I'm like, man, I'm going to really try to do the best I can in Northwest Arkansas, which is growing faster than anywhere else in Arkansas, right? So it's, maybe I'm wrong, but it's worked so far. And it's kind of dumb luck. I mean, it's like just lucky to be here.
No, I think and that's what our podcast is about here. I mean, founders, business owners, people building things that make Northwest Arkansas a special place to live. And we grew up here like you did, and we are really thankful for the growth that's happened here. We've all been beneficiaries.
I'm thankful
of
for
it.
Hurricane Katrina that brought
that
you
I
here.
ended up here. I'm so thankful for that too. Seriously. But no, I think it's interesting because your growth strategy is still strategic, and you're not stumbling into growth. It's, hey, no, I know if I keep putting my resources here, you're just focused on depth. You're not focused on breadth. And
Right.
I think the quote that comes to mind is, you can't be everything to everyone. And that's what you're doing with City Title in Northwest Arkansas. So I think that's really neat for you to share, and for us to share as well.
And you guys being from here, you just look at all the great things that not just what's happening here as far as growth of companies and all that, but just, whether it's the greenways or whether it's, having the lake or the university or all this great stuff that's happening here, compounded by all the people that are coming in. It's just going to be really dynamic and great to watch over the next several years. And, some good, some bad, but I think 90% good.
Yeah, grow or die.
Yeah.
No one wants to be stagnant. Even if you say you want to, stagnant isn't as sweet as it may sound.
Yeah, that's right.
What is you see a lot of this stuff, Blake. So we've talked about population growth here. We've talked about size of the deals growing. We've talked about, y'all are only focused here. Are you, and we've talked about, and you did a great job recognizing some of the amazing names and people here who have billions of dollars, but are still choosing to invest in our community, which is really special. Are you also seeing out-of-state money flood into the area in terms of investments, and what can you share that we can learn from there?
Yeah, no, I think there's a ton of money. Cameron could probably speak better to this than I, but whenever we started showing up in lists of the greatest places to live and all that, and COVID frankly helped us because people that are living in LA, like, I can work from anywhere. I get to work remote now. I'm gonna go. They come here, or they go to Austin, or they go to Nashville, and they're like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it has everything I want and then some, and it's a great place to live, and the people are nice, and there's a very generous attitude of people of just some of the nonprofits and stuff we have around here doing unbelievable work, and it's almost kind of can't believe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Growing up here, you kind of take it for granted, I think, to a certain extent, but I think there's a lot of people coming in and spending money because now we're on the map, right? And they go, we'll go check it out. Beth and I live in Bentonville now, and there's so many people that came here during COVID because they heard they could come ride bikes, and they couldn't travel places, but they get in their car from Texas or from California or from wherever, and they came here and started riding mountain bikes, and they've now bought houses here, and there's countless stories like that. But there's also a ton of money coming in here from REITs and stuff that are buying some of these big apartment complexes and buying office buildings, and I don't have any idea, but there's a whole bunch of investment in our real estate that's being bought by these big companies that are buying them to rent out or treating them VRBOs, which I don't think is as prevalent as it was, but there's a whole lot of houses that are being bought, which I kind of wish they would stop for a little bit and let people get houses, but it's an issue.
Do you track that internally, money from out of state versus
No.
in the area? Okay, yeah. Just curious, and just kind of thinking about the continued growth. Like, what's moving forward here? We get kind of moving, kind of keep pushing along. But what's as far as what's next? Like, does the organization of the company change? Do you kind of stay in this CEO role, or does that kind of stay the same for the time being? And then also, do you just keep doubling down on relationships here? Do you open a Bentonville office? I'm just kind of curious.
So that's actually that's being discussed now. Do we need? I always, when I worked for my former employer, we were putting branches everywhere, which is convenient. But for most people, if you guys are buying a house, if you're working in Bentonville, but you've got to come for your closing every 7 or 8 years whenever you refinance or buy a new house, sometimes it's longer than that. Is it a big deal to drive to my Rogers office? No, it's not. So we're more of a destination. We're not like, oh, hey, there's that, I'm gonna go close a deal. It's not that way, right? So I said, let's just put in a couple of nice offices, one in each county. And at the time, that made a whole lot of sense. And now I'm like, should we have an office in Bentonville? Should we have an office in Centerton? Should we have an office in Farmington? Should we have? I don't know what the right answer to that is, but that's kind of being considered now. Do we need to have, and how do you staff those, and who's going to go do that, right?
Yep.
Which is a whole different ballgame, because you can't just put one person out at an office by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make sense. So there's some opportunities there to maybe grow within our, our region that might make sense.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for growth over the next 5 years for y'all?
Staffing, people. There's a big demand for people, talented people that are willing to work, right? I mean, that's a real big challenge for us. I mean, we always say they don't make title agents anymore, so we've got to make them. We've got to train them from the ground up, and it's a whole lot of. I mean, lawyers will call our title agents and say, "Hey, how does this really work?" Because they're really good at it. Or lay people. We have a lot of attorneys on staff, as I mentioned, that understand that very well. But there's the staffing side of it, and more so, I think, on the title side than the closing side. I mean, a really good closer has a bunch of knowledge and a bunch of experience, but you can train people and kind of bring them up through that. Title people, we're going to have to do the same thing. That's probably the biggest challenge. The next, or maybe a bigger challenge even than that, is just the amount of fraud that's going on, whether it's seller impersonation fraud or wire fraud or some of the stuff that these, people, fraudsters, scammers have figured out that you kind of go where the money is, right? And we handle a whole bunch of people's money. And so there's payoff fraud where they try to get you to send money to the wrong places, and buyers and sellers are getting duped into sending earnest money to somebody because somebody got in their email and has been, that's the biggest threat, I think, to our business for the foreseeable future.
And is that the last 5 years, Blake, or is that?
Yeah, used to we were worried about people having fraudulent cashier's checks.
Okay.
And so we're like, well, we're going to require wires. And now we're like, maybe we got to go back to cashier's checks.
Yeah.
Because the fraud on the wire side, and it's really just email and email fraud. And somebody has an account that's not, it's not a secure email site, and somebody gets in through whatever because they clicked on the link and they just sit there and watch. And they see a transaction, they just watch. And then they say, okay, you need to send your $50,000 earnest money in. And they send the wire instructions, and it looks like it's from the title company, but it's not. And then they send it, and then they're like, hey, did you get my earnest money? You're like, nope. I mean, it's only happened a couple of times with us. It's happened a lot around the state, around the country.
Well, I feel like it's so popular now to where it's like, if you haven't experienced it yet, just wait a year, or whatever, and see whether you fall for it or not. Like, that's another thing, but someone's coming. And,
So what happens now is like, so if I say, hey, send me your wiring instructions, I'm going to send you net proceeds at closing because you signed early. You're going to send them to me, and then I'm going to call you on your cell phone, and you're going to go, I just sent them to you. I know, but I'm calling to check because I want to make sure it was you. And I voice verify those. We do those in every one.
Wow.
Because if you don't, one of them's going to catch you, and depending on the size of the transaction, it might wipe you out, right?
Yeah.
On these commercial deals, we're wiring millions and millions of dollars. I don't have millions and millions of dollars to put back. So you have insurance coverage for that kind of stuff, but still not pretty.
And are title companies similar to insurance companies where, someone coming in from out of market who wants a presence here is going to try to buy title companies, or they're going to try to buy, they're going to try to just take over a big market share through acquisition? Is that?
Yes.
I mean,
it hadn't happened here yet. There are companies here that are owned by bigger companies, but more so in bigger, Dallas, Phoenix, LA. There's big companies that come in and they'll either do it. Our business is people-based, right? I mean, like I said earlier. So if you're going to come in, you probably need to do it by acquisition because it's really hard to grow them unless you just come in and pay, crazy amounts of money to people to get them to come over and then build it over time. But if you want to have an instant impact, like all these people that are aggregating heat and air companies or termite, whatever, they're going to do it by acquisition. Historically, it's been where a title insurer, First American or Fidelity or Chicago or Old Republic, they'll go into a market and they'll start buying, or go into somewhere and start buying up agencies. And then they don't take care. I mean, I'm not saying they don't, but I mean, like historically, then they don't take care of your key people, and those key people go, well, I can go over here, and then that next thing you know, they're selling them back out. So
why haven't you sold?
I still like it. I mean, it's still fun to me, which I'm not I'm not getting younger, right? But I still get fired up about closing deals. I mean, a lot of people don't think I close deals, but that's the reason. A couple of reasons why I left. One, I just wanted to go do it. And the other deal is I want to get back in the transactions, closing deals. That's exciting to me, and it's stressful, but it's fun. But I'd rather go in and close a deal that you guys are doing, rather than managing a bunch of people. That's the transaction side of it's fun to me, and it's exciting, and you get to see what's going on, kind of get an insight to what's going on in the market.
And I guess that's even more fun because you grew up here, so it's like it's probably really fun to see. You're seeing all that growth really firsthand.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate in that I have a bunch of people that I personally handle their transactions that I've just have always admired, and you could a couple handful of people that you handle their deals, like every one of them.
Yeah,
and because it's fun to me, and they need somebody to take good care of their stuff and look after their stuff, and fortunately they think I'm their guy, right?
Well, and just through the ecosystem, you do a lot of very big projects, and so just cool to hear about. And so we we're still running a little short on time here, so we're going to kind of start wrapping things up. We got a couple more questions here for you. Number one, how do you define success?
For me, it's just, I think it's customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, right? I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not really motivated by money. I like money. I like, whatever. But to me, it's getting a deal that's hard and making it happen and getting it done right and having people appreciate the fact that you did it right. Mm-hmm. And the reputation, not for me, but for my team, of having a really good reputation, of being honest and trustworthy and doing the right thing, even when it hurts, right? Just that to me gives me pride that we're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And if you do all that, the money kind of takes care of itself. I mean, you make a decent return if you're handling people and treating people right. Mm-hmm. I'm a lot less involved in the numbers on a daily basis than I am in trying to make sure we're doing things properly.
Yeah.
Which is not a challenge because the people we have are great, but that's success to me, is closing a really big transaction. Everybody's like, man, that was awesome. Best experience I've ever had. And like, that gives me a lot of pride for me and my team.
Yeah. Mm. Well, we've kind of talked about why Northwest Arkansas. What's your vision for Northwest Arkansas?
Man, I wish I had a better grasp of what all is really going to happen, because you hear all these deals and you've heard them for the last several years. Like, well, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but this is going to be big. And you're like, well, I can't wait to hear. But it's for Northwest Arkansas, I think it's going to be, how do we manage the growth from all the stakeholders, starting with, cities and counties, and how do we handle infrastructure, and how do we get funding for all this stuff and all that. But that, and managing to keep it a great place to live, right? Because there's so many people coming in from all over the place that you hear people don't California or Californicate Northwest Arkansas or whatever it is, right? So to keeping a lot of the the values here, and the great place to live, and nice people, and people look after each other, keeping that in Northwest Arkansas, which is how it was when I grew up, and still is, for the most part. How do we keep that and manage all the growth? There's huge amounts of money being spent here to make sure it's cool. But how do we keep the culture here to where it's still a really great place to live? I think we're on track to do that, but that's a challenge.
Well, Blake, thanks for your time this morning. One thing we like to do at the end is just kind of roll through some of the big themes that we heard from our guests. And so the first thing that really stuck out as we talked with you was like your diligence. I think that's something that, and you even said in the way that you hire people, some of it's innate. And so that's been innate in you. And I don't know if it's from your parents or the way you grew up or your faith, but there's definitely something that stands out about your diligence, doing things the right way. I think the story that Cameron shared back in 2021 really captured it. Just this commitment to doing the best work and being hyper-focused on doing a good job. And even just the way you talked about tracking your KPIs, it's like, hey, I look at our recordings, but I'm not sitting there looking at our revenue and our profit every single day, because what matters the most to me is that we're taking care of our clients. And so thank you for doing that. And thanks for sharing that with us and our listeners, because we can all learn from that. The second piece is just the shared ownership. And I think you hit on it both on the family front and on the employee front. But just hearing you talk about how your employees are committed to that same excellence, I think really highlights how you share ownership and how you delegate with trust. Not just, hey, can you do this for me? But no, like, I trust that you will do an awesome job when I give this to you. And then the way you did it on the family front, I think really stuck out to us. I didn't write down how many times I heard it, but I heard you say Beth and I. And I don't know if she's involved in the day-to-day on the business. It doesn't sound like she is, but the way that you gave her credit, I think really stuck out to me as a husband, and just something to admire as a business owner.
She's extremely supportive and extremely patient. And while she's not here from 6 till 6 or whatever, she gets to hear a lot of it from 6 till bedtime. And then when we get up in the morning, I'm still talking about it. And she's really nice about it and very supportive. But I'm sure at times she's like, can we just talk about something else?
Bless her heart.
Yeah, bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, everybody goes, oh, that's the saint. I'm like,
But no, I just think that shared ownership piece, it just really stuck out to me as a husband, and can challenge us all in the way that we view our spouses and their support of us, and the way that we support them too.
And honestly, you guys know this, but you couldn't do what you're doing if you didn't have somebody that took care of the stuff that you don't have time to take care of. And they wouldn't want to do what you do, and you wouldn't want to do what they do necessarily. But it's a great partnership, if you will. It sounds stupid with a married couple, but it's really what it is. It's like I couldn't have grown the company with all these people and done what we've done and supported my team if she wasn't supporting other aspects of our life that have to be taken care of, with Jake or whatever. So it's truly a partnership.
It's awesome. And then the last piece, I think, just your commitment to people. And I think some of that, Blake, is you've grown up here in the community. I think it's highlighted all throughout our conversation, but the community is extremely important to you, whether it's church or the way that you've invested your time in the chamber and the Rotary Club, just things like that. You're extremely involved in the community. And I think the outflow of that, or the fruit of that, is your commitment to people. And I think one of the things that I thought was really neat was just the way you talked about 2023 being a hard year, but you were committed to your people and didn't have layoffs. And some people left for different reasons, but the fact that you were maybe at the time not making the right business decision on paper, but the right decision for your employees and your commitment to the community, I think was super inspiring. So thanks for sharing that.
You guys know this, but I didn't know this maybe as early on in life, or maybe just didn't realize it, but you don't really get joy from making money or from spending. Like, you get joy from community and from helping people and from, serving others, and not to get off in the weeds on like I'm, some great guy or something, but that's where you get your satisfaction, right? I mean, there's temporary satisfaction in a lot of things, but long-term satisfaction of knowing you did the right thing and that you helped somebody and whatever, that's what builds you up.
So good. Well, Blake Hanby, City Title, thanks for the time this morning. Thanks for just sharing everything you did about your personal life and things you're passionate about, but also about your business and how you've built it, and why places like City Title make Northwest Arkansas a great place to live. So we're thankful for you. How can people get in touch with you or learn more about your business?
Yeah, just get on the internet or call City Title. Yeah, we're here all the time, it seems like. I think everybody, including every spam call, knows my number. So, but yeah, we're really easy to find. But yeah, just on our website, citytitlellc.com, or call us. We're easy to find in Google or anywhere else. Thanks for having me. I was really nervous about this, but you guys made it easy.
That's great.
Good.
We're thankful to have you.
Yeah. Thanks, Blake.